Teacher disapproves of boy adopted by two dads, so these three girls get her fired. He stood before his classmates for what felt like an eternity. A haze of stinging tears filled his sight, burning his eyes. He didn't dash them away. He looked at the teacher as she continued talking. But then three girls shot to their feet before him. What they said made his eyes widen. Tom Lavine always wished for a family he could call his. Soon to turn 12, Tom was an orphan who'd already failed 2 adoption procedures. Although Tom never admitted this to anyone, his hope of finding a family that genuinely wanted him was diminishing. This was until Simu and Carter adopted him. Simu and Carter were the perfect dads to Tom. They moved him to their house in the suburbs, where they loved him as he'd never thought was possible. They gave Tom all he could want, from an awesome room, a bike, to a gaming console. They also enrolled Tom in the neighborhood school. Thankful for his parents, Tom finally started living his life worry-free. But this wouldn't last long. The Monday that changed Tom's life forever began as normal as the ones he'd spent with his dads. Tom, like many students across America, was fresh from Thanksgiving break. As part of a class exercise, a teacher asked each student to share what they were thankful for. Tom's hand shot up. He would show everyone he was grateful for everything in his life. He had no clue what he'd say would affect his relationship with his dads. The teacher's gaze immediately fell on Tom. With a warm smile, she nodded at him to speak. Tom sprang to his feet and cleared his throat. The class laughed, and he grinned adorably. "I'm thankful for finally being adopted by my 2 dads," Tom said. "I didn't think I'd ever be loved or accepted. Every day they prove me." The teacher held a finger at Tom, and her smile faded right away. "Did you say dad or dads?" the teacher asked. Although her voice wasn't antagonistic, Tom suspected something was wrong. "Dads. They're 2, Miss Chelsea," he replied. The teacher chuckled lowly, holding the bridge of her nose as she inhaled deeply. The gesture sent a chilling wave up Tom's spine. Something was definitely wrong. 2 dads, of course. "I wonder what's next," the teacher remarked to the class, expecting a laugh. When she received none, she fixed her collar and began talking down on Tom. As she talked, Tom's life flashed before him where he stood. He remembered the helpless days and nights he'd spent in the orphanage wishing someone would come for him. He thought Miss Chelsea would stop, but it got worse. Miss Chelsea talked ill of Simu and Carter, stereotyping them. The entire class froze. The students looked away as she spoke. Tom helplessly stood there. Miss Chelsea was supposed to build him up, yet she was tearing him down. He meant to speak up but remembered something that made the words melt from his tongue. Although Tom was still young, he understood everything the teacher talked about. Simu and Carter gave him a life far beyond his dreams, and he wanted to stand up for them. But Tom had failed 2 adoptions already. What if he escalated matters by speaking up? He didn't know what he'd do without his dads in his life. All he could do now was stand through Miss Chelsea's onslaught. Tom's sight cast to the floor. Tears blurred everything, dripping down his cheeks. An uncomfortable heat had washed over him, and his stomach churned with pain and anxiety. His fingers curled into a fist. He could hear Miss Chelsea talk, her voice louder and more menacing. Then something happened that made Tom lift his head. "Stop," someone screamed before Tom. Someone else shouted the same thing to his side. "Please, Miss Chelsea, stop," another voice rented the classroom. But the teacher did not stop. If anything, she took this as a reason to speak louder. A sob pushed its way out of Tom's mouth, and he stifled it. Could this get any worse? 2 girls shot to their feet before Tom. Another girl stood up near the wall. They didn't speak, only turned to Tom with glossy eyes. Tom looked at the 3 girls and knew his life was over. The school would expel him, and his dads wouldn't move forward with him as their son. It was over. He couldn't have predicted what happened next. The first 2 girls stormed out of the classroom. The third one came and patted Tom's hand before following them. Miss Chelsea raised her brow at this new development, craning her neck out of the door to see what was happening. She shrugged and returned to class. "Anyway," she said, but the principal marched into the classroom. "Excuse me, Miss Chelsea. Can I see you in my office?" "Now, thanks," the principal said between gritted teeth. The teacher looked at the principal disbelievingly but followed him out. The three girls who'd fetched the principal hurried to Tom, cleaning his face. "It's okay," one of them said. "It's over." But even though he wanted to believe them, Tom knew he still had to face his dads and try to explain everything. Simu and Carter showed up within seconds of each other. They hugged Tom tight as he tried to explain the situation. "We don't care, Tommy," Simu said. "And we're so sorry you went through this," Carter added. As the family embraced, they saw the teacher leave with a carton of desk accessories and books. As she hopped into her car and screeched away, Tom finally understood he was not alone anymore.